This stern squirt, genuinely one of my favourite freestyle moves, and I do think it's one of the more underrated moves in flatwater freestyle. With the right technique, this is a really sweet move to add to your quiver, especially when you take it a step further and go for the lunar orbit. Step 1. Paddle forward. Take a final forward stroke to initiate a flat spin to your right. Then, wind up your body in the same direction that your boat is spinning. As your body is rotating, briefly drop your front right quadrant before following suit with your back left quadrant. Place a backstroke on the same stride to kick off the rotation for the stern squirt. Keep your head and body close to the surface of the water to balance yourself as the boat spins around. For the stern squirt, lean back slightly upon completion of the rotation to bring the bow back down again. To pull off a lunar orbit, you'll need one more end, so instead of sitting back at the end of the stern squirt, wait for the slight pop from your stern before slamming down the bow with the back of your active blade. Okay, so that's a quick insight into this stern squirt and lunar orbit. I'm going to have a closer look now into more of the specifics to figure out how exactly this trick works. As usual, start off with a few forward strokes to get you moving forward. Take a half sweep stroke on your left side to initiate the move. When your kayak has rotated about 90 degrees on the water, wind up your body until you can reach behind the kayak, or until your shoulders are almost lined up with your bow and stern. Look up and over your shoulder. It might be tempting to lean back here, but try to avoid this. Instead, maintain tension in your core so you'll be ready to pull the bow up. Now it's pretty tricky to just rip straight into a stern squirt at this stage, so I like to use a little rock to ease into it. You can see here how I'm actually dropping my right edge momentarily and pushing down on my feet to dip the front right quadrant of the bow underwater. You want to try to smoothly transition to rock into the rear left quadrant to start to submerge your stern. When the boat is about halfway to verticality, stick that blade in at about 45 degrees to pull the boat around. The paddle should be around that angle so that it achieves two things. 1. It pulls the stern around to get you completely vertical, and 2. It continues the rotation around the long axis of your kayak. Once you're vertical, ease off on the pressure on the blade and focus on keeping your body and head close to or even on the surface of the water. You might have to make some careful adjustments to your body position here to stay vertical. Leaning backwards will flatten the kayak out, and leaning forward will steepen the angle and make you more vertical. As soon as you've come around and completed a 360-degree rotation, lean back a little to bring your boat back down. If you want to go for the lunar orbit finish on this, prepare for the final end of the move. Earlier on I mentioned that you can use the small pop granted by your stern to help you throw down that end. So maybe I can expand on that a little bit here. At the beginning of the move, when you push the stern down on that first stroke, you want it to go a little bit deeper than you might think. The result of this is that the stern will pop up towards the end of the rotation. It might not be obvious how this small pop would help you throw the bow down, but I think it is the key to getting smooth lunar orbits for a few reasons. A. It makes you weightless for a split second, which gives you the chance you need to switch your blade around to slam the bow down. Otherwise you'll fall over when you try to switch around, because you're just taking away that support that was holding you up. B. It allows you to shift your body forward so that you can get your weight over your boat again. For a stern stall, you want your body to be kind of floating in the water to help you balance. The problem with this is that it isn't really a position of power, because your boat has caught up to you. The stern pop allows you to lean forward so that you can rotate your body ahead of your boat again and regain control. So, just as the bow begins to fall down again from the pop, have a quick glance upstream before slamming the bow down hard. This glance should serve as a final opportunity to straighten up the boat as you pull the final end through. So that's it for the stern squirt and lunar orbit breakdown. Next we'll get into some troubleshooting and a few more advanced techniques. The first thing you might want to think about is how much work you should be doing with your body before the paddle even goes into the water. As with most freestyle moves, the paddle should be there to assist you in completing the rotation, but your body needs to do most of the work. The timing on this move is critical. Work on your lean cleans if you're struggling with the rocking motion in the beginning. I should probably mention that it's also possible to take another stroke when you're vertical to stabilize yourself and help to complete the rotation. Personally, I think it's better to get into the habit of trying to complete the rotation with one stroke. Otherwise, you'll just have to relearn the timing for the single stroke method later on. It is of course also a matter of personal preference, but getting around in one stroke just feels a bit cleaner. Overall, I think it'll also help to keep your rhythm when you're going for linked moves. If you're struggling with getting the boat all the way around in one stroke, check that you're reaching around behind you far enough when you're doing that reverse stroke. This will give you more leverage when you're trying to pull that stern through the water. So one important thing with this move, guys, just be careful not to overdo it in a single session. It can overwork your hip flexors, which can result in a stiff or a sore lower back. If you're feeling a bit sore the next day, maybe just take a few days off and just check that you're not leaning too far back during this move at any point. For this reason, I would also recommend regular stretching and strength exercises outside of your kayaking sessions for your core and hip flexors to prevent injury. Of course, you should always consult a physiotherapist if in any doubt. I have actually had to do this in the past, and in hindsight, I do think it was during a time when I was just learning and practicing this move a lot, so be careful out there. Alright, moving into some more advanced tips. In freestyle, it's always a good idea to think one step ahead during a ride, or even just during a single move for that matter. If you know how to stern squirt already, for example, and you want to go for the lunar orbit, you should be thinking about the timing and placement of that second stroke while you're spinning around on the stern. Practicing your stern squirt will also naturally improve your stern stall. These moves obviously rely on similar muscles when it comes to stabilizing your boat on its stern. So taking this to whitewater, it's pretty beneficial to be comfortable in this position. Next time you find yourself trying to punch a hole but instead get your bow launched skywards, you'll be in a much better position to get that bow back down under control. Another good way to take this move a step further is always to learn it on both sides if you haven't already, or if you already know how to do a lunar orbit on one side, try to go for a stern squirt at least on the other side. I think this also helps to reduce the risk of injury as you're balancing the muscles out on your left and right sides more evenly. Of course, you can also do this move without the paddle. As I've mentioned in other videos, this is a great exercise to test your balance and technique as it forces you to rely more on your core muscles and body movement. It can also highlight where you're using your paddle to compensate for some slight imperfections in your technique. Lastly, it's a great incentive to practice your hand roll. If this seems a bit out of your comfort zone, take turns with the paddle buddy who can spot you. So get out there and get spinning on your stern. And most importantly, remember to take this freestyle kayaking business very seriously at all times, because really, that's the most important thing. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.